You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, alongside former England fast bowler Steve Harmison, and we've got the usual busy show for you. We'll start by reacting to the breaking news out of Australia overnight that Captain Pat Cummins will definitely miss the first test against England due to injury. Cricbuzz's Bharat Sundaresan will join us to give us the latest news from Down Under. And England have begun their ODI series in New Zealand with a 4-wicket defeat, with Harry Brook doing some genius papering over some top order cracks. What an innings, what a second hundred for Harry Brook. We'll discuss the result and hear from the England captain himself. And also Durham Chief Executive Tim Bostock will join us to look back on their relegation from Division 1 and the prospect of the North East having a 100 franchise, amongst many other things, in a wide-ranging interview. We'll also round up some of the week's other big stories, and we'll finish with the final word. So plenty to come over the next hour. This is Following On. Well, Harmy, as I said, what a 100 from Harry Brook. What a 100 it was. It was the highest individual percentage of a completed innings in England's ODI history. Marcus Trescothick's 137 out of 240 against Pakistan at Lord's in 2001. You'll remember that. I remember thinking at the time, gee, that'll never be beaten. That was just over 57% of England's runs. Harry Brook scored 60.54% of England's runs with his 135 out of 223. I thought there was a lot of criticism about England's top order. I mean, you can't be too critical when you're 5 for 3, 10 for 4. The ball was hooping, it was seaming. And I don't know. I mean, I was commentating on it, and you'll be commentating on the next one. I just thought it was more good bowling, really.
Yeah, it was. It was good bowling, and I think when you get out in any form of cricket, if you face less than 8, 10 balls, you've been got out. You've been got out. The bowler, you have to give the bowler some credit. He set you up. He's moved you around, and he's gone for the kill, and he's knocked you over. And when you look at it, Smith, Duckett, Root, and Bethel, you could argue that that's going to be England's top. Three of them could be England's top 4 in the Ashes. And they were knocked over. It's as simple as that. I mean, it was good bowling. We have to look at it from England's point of view, because that's what we do. Because obviously, we've got one eye on the England side, and we're not saying not interested in New Zealand, but we're more focused on where England are going and the preparation getting into the Ashes. But they were knocked over by some high quality bowling. Matt Henry's an unbelievable performer when there's something in the wicket. Zach Folkes again shown his qualities in white ball cricket. I thought the rest were a little bit more expensive as they went on, but for me they were got out. The wickets, the deliveries were in a good area, and asking questions of a batter in any format of cricket, whether it was red ball cricket, white ball cricket, the top of the soft stump doesn't move. A good area is a good area, and if you play a white ball cricket or you play red ball cricket, if you see a batter walk out and you put a ball 5.5 meters from him, goes over the top of off stump, and it asks a question, when he first walks out to bat in any format of cricket, you've got a chance of getting him out. And New Zealand did, and you have to give you a huge amount of credit to them for that.
Zach Fuchs was swinging the ball absolutely remarkably. And we were commentating with Craig Cumming, the former Black Caps opener. And he said that he's always swung the ball like that, except that 2 or 3 years ago, he swung it, big booming in-swingers to the right-handers mostly. He swung it at 125 kilometres an hour. What is that? About 75 kilometres an hour, yeah. And so the selector said, you know what, if you can add 10 kilometres an hour, give yourself another 4 or 5, 6 miles an hour, then you'll be unplayable. And he's gone off, he's gone to the gym for 2 years. And he's come back and he is bowling 10 kilometres quicker. I mean, I just thought he was absolutely brilliant. Let's hear from Harry Brook, who he had a familiar message for his top order colleagues.
No, it's definitely no cause for concern. The top, they're all unbelievable players. There's a reason why they're playing cricket for England. They're the best 4 batters in the country, and yeah, it's just one of them days. A couple of them got nice balls. Like I said, could we try and go a little bit harder and knock them off the length? I personally think so. But that's something that we can take from this game and move forward from it and learn from it.
England captain Harry Brook. It just sounded a bit silly, Harmy. I mean, go harder. Well, first of all, face some more balls, and then maybe maybe go harder.
Yeah.
Well, you're 10 for 4. You don't need to be going harder, really.
Yeah, I love Harry. I really do. And it was hard for me not to. I wasn't going to stick the boot in before we obviously we knew that interview was coming. But I mean, there's two people who shouldn't be anywhere near a microphone. One's Ben Dougie, and Harry Brook is starting to become, not the second one, but he's becoming the first one. And he's going to have a lot more of it when he's even more so as England captain. But how can you go harder when 7 of your players don't face 10 balls or less? I mean, how can you go harder? It's impossible. It's impossible to go harder when 7 of 11 players have faced 10 balls or less. I think 9 faced 15 balls or less. So 9 of your 11 batters have faced 15 balls or less, and you're asking them to go harder. I mean, 2 of them are out first ball. I mean, it just seems as though it's like anything. I mean, if you don't want to speak to the media, don't speak to the media, but don't say stupid things. Yeah. This seems to be the common message from Brendan McCullum. Well, we go harder. If we can't, if we get embarrassed, or we played a shocking shot, or we get blown away by some good bowling, oh, we got to go harder. What do you mean go harder? I mean, you just haven't faced any balls to go harder. And that, for me, that's the only thing that I really struggle with this England group. I love them all to bits. I really do want them all to do well, and I really love this England side, and I want this Ashes to go their way, because this last 3-4 years of Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes, and now Harry Brook has been an amazing ride for English supporters, better than anything we've had before. But every time we stick a microphone in front of them, it seems as though they're not interested in speaking to the media, and they say things that, well, doesn't come across right. You asking a team to go harder when you've been bowled out, when 2 of your players have scored runs, and 9 of your batters have batted for 15 balls or less, and you're saying go harder. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, look, I'm sitting here criticising what he said. I should be talking about what he did. He did. I mean, these written was fantastic. That is, I mean, in the reality, I didn't see it all. I mean, I was asleep. There was no way I was getting up after doing the football matches in the afternoon. I was no way I was getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning to watch it. But he was breathtaking. And when I come away from what happened at Mount Maunganui, I'm going, yes, right. I'm not saying I want England to get beat, but Harry Brook has got 100. Bryden Castle looked brilliant, 3 for 45. That's 2 ticking the boxes going towards Australia, right? This is about preparation. Smith, Duckett, Root, Bethel's been there a while. They've just flown over, and they're getting into it, and they got knocked over by a very, very good New Zealand bowling attack with a little bit in a pitch, and the ball was swinging. So there's his time to come. But for me, so pleased the way Harry Brook looks, so pleased the way Bryden Castle looks. And like we've said a couple of times today, we'll say it today, and we'll say it last week, this is the starter of the main event. And the main event is the Ashes and the preparation towards the Ashes. Well, England's number 5 going into the Ashes doesn't look in bad nick. And one of England's bowlers has bowled a nice 10-over spell. That's a big tick in the box for me going forward.
Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. It is a concern, though, that, I mean, England have won 10 out of their last 10 completed T20 internationals, and only 8 out of the last 24 since the 2023 World Cup. I mean, that's a 100% win rate compared to a 33% win rate.
Yeah, and I think it come. I mean, they got knocked over, didn't they? 223, nowhere near enough in 50-over cricket. I think in the grand scheme of things, England are 2 bowlers short, and I think the balance and the makeup of this group, we all fight for perfection when it comes to the all-rounder being able to bat in the top 6 and bowl these 10 overs. The reason why Owen Morgan was so successful was because for a lot of years we had 2 of them. We had Moeen Ali and we had Ben Stokes. We haven't got that now. I don't think Sam Curran's bowling in 50 over cricket is up to bowling 10 overs. I think possibly outside the subcontinent. I argue that Jamie Overton's the same. That if we had the grand luxury, you have Jamie Overton and Sam Curran in the same team, they bowl 10 overs between them. But we haven't got that luxury, I don't think, of the all-rounder being able to bowl 10 overs because you haven't got one. So I think England are probably a bowler, at least one frontline bowler short, which is probably Jofra Archer in a major tournament. And then you would have to choose Sam Curran at 7, with Archer at 8, Carse at 9. I think that's a little bit weak when it comes to the batting, balancing the side out. So I think England have got problems balancing their team out in 50 over cricket, where in 4 overs T20 cricket, I don't think that's such an issue. I think this game here was lost by the top order because New Zealand bowled well. I just worry that this 50 over side for quite a while now, since Ben Stokes and Moeen Ali have gone, balancing the fact that middle order, lower middle order, the ability to have a batter who can bowl 10 overs or all rounders. I don't think we quite have them to balance the side out to make us a top 50 over side, because Sam Curran at 7 in the longer format, Jamie Overton at 8, and they have to bowl 10 overs each. I don't think that, unfortunately, is strong enough. That's not criticism against them. I just think they're more suited to play 4 over, 20 over cricket.
So who does Jofra come in for?
Well, for me, he would have to come in for one of the all rounders, because I think what you need with Jofra, you've got with Jofra is 10 overs. I don't think over the course of a world tournament, and that's what we're talking about, Manners. We're talking about world tournaments. We're judged on world tournaments. I don't think Sam Curran, Jamie Overton bowl 10 overs. So Jofra would have to come in for one of them, and then everybody would slide up one, which would mean Sam Curran at 7 or Jamie Overton at 7, and then Jofra. And then you're guaranteed bankers of Carse, Luke Wood, Mark Wood, whichever one you go with there, Jofra Archer, and Adil Rashid. Then you're guaranteed 40 overs, where I don't think you're guaranteed 40 overs with the side that was put out against New Zealand at Mount Maunganui.
Right, it's that time of the year when we speak to one of our favourite guests, Bharat Sundaresan, writer and broadcaster, and now confirmed Australian citizen. Bharat, it's lovely to see you and to speak to you. Harmy, I have to say, said a couple of weeks ago he'll not play. And he was talking about the whole series. He said he won't play. You don't get over an injury like that. And well, it's been confirmed that Pat Cummins won't play in the first test in Perth. Your thoughts? I mean, is he going to play any role in the series?
Firstly, good to be back with you boys, and yeah, I mean it is Ashes season, so I think they just fast tracked my citizenship so that I'm not sitting on any fence that I pledged my allegiance to Australia. They even given me a flag that I always have right behind me these days, and I'm not wearing my Australian hat when I answer that question, Manners. I think he will play, but having said that, and Harmy is right. I mean, as a fast bowler, he would know. And every physio or cricketing physio I've spoken to in the last few weeks has said the same thing. Look, he's doing his rehab, he's doing his running. You can see as many scans as you want, but till the time he actually starts bowling, he wouldn't know how much his back is healed, and the doctors wouldn't know either. So he said a few times he needs 4 weeks of bowling in the nets before he feels ready. So, I mean, he's been ruled out of the first test. I'll be very surprised if he plays the second test. If anything, he might feature in the latter half of the series. But right now, I don't think anybody really knows with any certainty.
Yeah, that's the thing. The human body, when it comes to rehabilitation and getting it back on the right track to bowling, is something that is an individual way. And I think Pat's strong in mind. He's an experienced player, and I don't think they're going to lose too much, I think, with a captaincy. But you mentioned there about him missing the first test and then probably missing the second test. They're probably the two bowler-friendly test matches, would you say, Bharat, with the Perth test, the day and night test. But I think that makes it even harder for him to come back, because if all of a sudden you've got back-to-back test matches in Melbourne and Sydney, and then you've got a flat one in Adelaide, all of a sudden the management of his body on potentially a couple of flat wickets and back-to-back test matches might actually muddy the waters for Australia when they come to selection for the latter part of the series, especially if England are winning.
No, I think you're very right about him playing back-to-back test matches, Harmy. And then, I mean, nobody said it out aloud, but even if he does come back, let's say, I think the one advantage Australia have is there are gaps between test numbers 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, and then the three back-to-back, like you said, because the Adelaide test is being played so late in December this year. So I think even if he does play, I can see him play test number 3 and 5. I would be surprised if he plays all three on the trot or even two on the trot. So I think you're very right. And I think it'll come down to where the series stands at that point, and how Pat is feeling about himself as well. Because as captain as well, I don't think he's going to say, I want to play unless he's confident that he can bowl 40 overs or 50 overs or whatever it could take out of him. Because then he'll be the one with the bowler shot in the middle. And the one thing is, Adelaide will be flat. I mean, it's a red ball test. We haven't had a red ball test in the last 2 years. Melbourne and Sydney, who knows, Harmy? Like the last couple of years, we've seen some interesting pitches. Sydney was a green top against India. It was doing all sorts. And even that small run chase was made possible mainly because Jasprit Bumrah was, ruled out because of his injury. So you really don't know what kind of pitches we are going to get as we get to Melbourne and Sydney. But Adelaide, from what I've seen in the Shield so far, will be batting friendly and will see a lot of runs. So a lot up in the air. And they don't just lose Pat Cummins, the bowler, right? Or the captain. The batting suddenly is an issue. I mean, number 8. We still don't know who's going to bat 6. So if Stark's batting 8, whoever they bring in, unless it's it's a Neser or a Sean Abbott going forward, I mean, the lower order is weak, and I just have a feeling the lower order is going to have a big say in this series. And it's just the way Pat Cummins comes and changes test matches. So yes, you have Scott Boland averaging 12 on Australian soil, but no Pat Cummins is a big blow.
I agree with you about lower order runs. I think that will be a factor, but I'm going to ask you about the top order in just a moment. With Sam Constas and Matt Renshaw apparently went straight from the ODI series to go and play for Queensland in the last round of the Sheffield Shield. So he was putting his hand up as well. So while you ponder that, I wanted to ask you as well about the appetizer. Now, obviously, England are snacking on New Zealand or being snacked upon. And it's been the Virat Rohit farewell tour. How's that been? Has that been? I mean, it's crazy to think that there's any element of low keyness about their farewell tour. But what's it been like? Big crowds? I mean, is it felt like an hors d'oeuvre?
Big crowds for sure. And I mean, you generally say, oh, there are, India don't play away games, but the crowds have been so India dominant. It's not been funny. Even 2 nights ago, I was in Sydney. There were, I think, about 42,000 people, of which I'm sticking my neck out and saying 41,500 were Indian fans. I don't know where they go and buy these Indian flags in Australia, to be honest. And look, I think you can call it the appetizer, but you've been to enough Indian households, manners. It's felt like two main courses. The main course that they serve at 8 and the main course that they serve at 2 a.m. So this is the 8 p.m. main course. And the crowds were fantastic. Perth was a damn squib. I mean, it was terrible. The pitch was doing a lot and there was so much rain. You kind of discount that game. Adelaide, good crowd. Sydney was perfect. And you know how my brain always thinks through wrestling angles, manners. Now I have a wrestling podcast as well. I'm getting into the ring next year. In wrestling, they say you never send the crowd, or you always send the crowd back home happy. And it just felt like that. See, by the time we got to Sydney, Australia had sealed the series. All you wanted to see was Rohit and Virat have a partnership together and finish on a high. And we got that as well. And I've known Virat and Rohit pretty much from the start of my career. It was I've had some lovely conversations with them off the field as well. So they had that farewell vibe to it. I bumped into Virat in Adelaide. I said, "Hey, welcome to my city," and he said, "Bro, little bit my city also." Because of how much he loves Adelaide. It's sad that he finished with a duck, but even then, for Virat to have even raised his glove towards the members' pavilion after getting out for 0 was quite something. But just a perfect finale. I said it on air. It was like watching, this two bandmates come together and have the wizened bandmates anyway, and have like play the greatest hits. That's what it felt like when Rohit and Virat were batting. All the shots came out, and the crowd was sort of singing along with every shot.
You mentioned Bharat. You took there, and the one thing I'm going to pick you up on. You said the Perth pitch did a bit. Now, are we going to get that Perth pitch did a bit for the first Test match? And if that's the case, well, I don't think England should play a Bashir. But then, if that's the case, do Australia play a Lion?
That's a big shout, and if it plays the way it did the other night or last Sunday, I think it was in Perth. Yeah, I mean, playing a spinner, you might think, "Oh, do you need it?" But Nathan Lyon has a great record there, so he will play. He was not happy when he was left out in that from that Test match in Jamaica. I'd be shocked if he doesn't play. But and while we were there as well, Hami, I mean, obviously, like you focused a bit on India, but we were thinking about, hang on, if Hazelwood and Stark get these conditions, for that matter, Wood and Archer as well, we're going to see a proper bounce affair. The ball was bouncing a lot. It felt like the Waka of old, if anything.
Okay, so who does open with Usman and who does bat 6? 3, 4, 5 are locked in, right? Marnus is at 3.
Yeah, I think so. See, the big debate right now, Manners, in Australia is Cam Green, right? So Cam Green, there's a Sheffield Shield round starting this week. We don't know whether he's going to bowl or not. Signs are he won't bowl because Australia do want that fifth bowling option. So if Cam Green doesn't bowl, in a way, their hand is forced into playing Bo Webster at number 6. But then my question is like, has Cam Green already become so undroppable? I'm not sure, because if you don't drop him, then he'll have to bat 3. Steve Smith has said, no, I'm not going from 4, head at 5. Khawaja is going to open. So then Manas has no option but to open. But when he's in the form of his life, or he's batting the way the selectors have wanted him to bat, after a long time, why would you want to not put him in his natural habitat of number 3? So there's a lot of, this week will tell you what's going to happen. I think the front runner is someone you did not mention, is Jake Weatherall. So who you guys might not know much about. So, he's from Darwin, came and played a lot of cricket in South Australia. A great story. I mean, he's overcome some serious mental health problems, and he's in a great place in his life. He's been scoring runs for fun in the last 12, 14 months. Attacking batter, I mean, nobody's like David Warner, but he will score quickly. And he's the front runner ahead of, Constis, I think, has fallen off the pecking order. It's between him and Renshaw, and I think Weatherall looks the favorite. Even though Usman Khawaja has come out today and said he wants the Queensland top 3, him, Renshaw, and Marnus. But I think Weatherall is, if they're playing a specialist opener, it will be him, and then Marnus at 3. Ideally, they'll want Green at 6, but we'll see how he goes in this Shield round.
Is it all sold out? Or all the I mean, is it as big in Australia as it is outside Australia?
No, it is, Manners. I think I've been hearing, depending on who you speak to, 40,000, 80,000, 120,000 English fans are coming for this. They all missed out 4 years ago because of COVID. I don't know where they're going to stay, but I'll tell you what, the hotels are super expensive. The flights are super expensive. So if you're listening to this and making plans, maybe you missed out, or you're going to be paying a lot of money. So first 3 days, I think, in most of the Test matches have been sold out, including Perth. I've never seen the Perth Stadium full for cricket. So I really hope this could be the first time we see that. It's awesome. It's going to be great. I mean, again, speaking of wrestling, this is the WrestleMania main event, right? We waited 4 years for this. Let's see if Bazball with brains works. And can I just also say, with Pat Cummins not playing, this is such a great opportunity for England. Come on, England, make the most of it. I mean, don't make sure Hazelwood and Stark bowl a lot of spells, because Hazelwood has not finished one summer. I think it's been 5 years since he played all 5. Stark's been a warrior for the last 2-3 summers. But if you can get into one of them, who knows, right? It's not that Australia have a Scott Boland waiting in the wings, because he'll be playing already.
An interesting question would be, are England coming over to do what Australia have done to England for so many years, which England are possibly going to win the sledging war. England are going to be the ones that are in your face. England are the ones that are going to be, I think, more vocally dominant, because it's not in the nature of Pat Cummins' team. I know Steve Smith's going to be captain, but England are the ones that are possibly going to have to back that bravado up. How do you think Australia will feel, and the 60,000 crowds feel, when England are going sort of, full on? Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, Matt Hayden style in your face cricket, because it's not used to being the other way around, especially in Australia.
No, you're right. I think there'll be more noise from, say, the commentary boxes than from the players in the middle. This current lot of Australians, I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to cover down and let England do whatever they want, but they're not the most vocal. They're not, and also not the kinds who will get too like rattled. That word I've already used. 2 months out from the Ashes or 1 month out from the Ashes by the sledging war and all of that. But there's going to be so much noise, and you're going to have David Warner in one TV box and Stuart Broad in the neighboring TV box, and like they'll all be firing off. The press conferences will be fun, and I don't even think we have to wait for the Ashes. England land 10 days before the first test. They're going to play a couple of games. So they'll be, saying stuff even before we get into that Ashes build-up in Perth. I'm very intrigued to see how this Australian team responds to that kind of fire. And we saw it last year when they lost in Perth, Army to India. It felt like the whole country turned on them. They fought back really well and won in Adelaide. But I've never seen an Australian team being treated in that fashion after just one defeat. So, which is why I keep saying England have a great opportunity here. If they can start strong, you never know, because there are a lot of former players in Australia also waiting to jump at the selectors and saying, we told you should have started this rebuild 2 years ago. And so they could turn on each other. So there you go. I think that adds a fascinating angle to the series.
One of the main reasons we wanted to talk to you was about the structure of county cricket and the championship. It brought a smile to your face, which is a relief. Obviously, there is concern that the counties have been unable to reach a consensus, and there's also a feeling that they perhaps never will. But while you think about that, let's not start off with any half volleys. Let's go straight in with a bouncer. What is the cost to a county like Durham of relegation?
Listen, in financial terms, it isn't actually massive, to be perfectly honest. The spectator base in county cricket is very loyal, irrespective of whether you're first or second division. And the sponsors are usually tied in for a reasonable length of time. The cost actually is, it's probably further down the line. If you look at your playing squad, I mean, we have recruited a squad for the next 5 years, and a squad that we fully expected to not just win the championship once, but win it more than once. And it's not a squad that needs rejuvenating or rebuilding because it's aging, which often happens in sports where you get relegated and there's a whole new generational change. So the challenge for us is that we've signed players that are first division players. I mean, if all our players were on the market tomorrow, if we had a transfer system like in football, and we've been relegated to the championship, I guarantee every single one of the first division clubs will be in for every single one of our players, which makes it all the more galling. Now, the reality is, and the good news is, that thanks to the work that Marcus has done and Ryan have done over the last couple of years, all of our squad are all tied in for at least 2 years. Okay, so listen, in simple terms, right, they got us into this mess, and they've got a year to get us out of this mess. Now, if at the end of next season we don't get promoted, and obviously I expect us to, but there's nothing guaranteed. It's hard getting out of a second division or a championship in any sort of sport. And Lancashire didn't do it last year with all their cash. But if we do not get out next year, well, then you're at risk, because we've signed players that want to play for England and are absolutely first division players. And if we're not in the first division, you do run the risk then in 2 years' time of having to rebuild that squad. Now, the last time this happened was clearly when Durham got relegated last time, when we were in financial trouble. And we lost a bunch, Army will know, we lost a bunch of players, whether it be Keaton, whether it be Scott, whether it be Liam, players that clearly wanted to play for England, had aspirations. So we don't want to be in that position again. So for me, the biggest threat is if we stay down in that second division longer than one season, then it starts to become tricky then in terms of renegotiating new contracts. I mean, the fortunate thing is we've attracted a bunch of young players that have got massively long runways, like Casey Aldridge, for argument's sake, Sam Connors, Archie Bailey. These kids have joined us because they want to play for England. And then the likes of Robinson and Will Rhodes and Emilio Gay and these guys are clearly in that position at the moment. So that's the biggest risk. It's not so much financial, to be honest.
Tim, you're talking there. You just mentioned half a dozen names and maybe more. Some people looking at the club and looking at Durham, and obviously I've got more than one eye on it. Some would argue you've got too many options. Does that cause you problems if you do have too many options? Because there's times this year, I was not critical, but me and Manners were talking about halfway through the season that I think Durham used 12 fast bowlers before the first break, and I know you have to rotate and stuff like that. And you mentioned the batting unit. Sometimes you're having to sort of leave a top batter out. Can you sometimes have too many options?
Yeah, you can, and you're actually bang on, to be perfectly honest. I mean, obviously, I've been giving this some thought, and we got ourselves in a bit of a mess, okay? And the one thing that is really interesting, that Marcus and Ryan are very clear thinking in terms of our strategy, off the field and on the field. And I think this year we got it wrong. We got ourselves in a bit of a muddle with selection and with batting order. We almost had an embarrassment of riches. And then with the bowling you mentioned, I mean, we had all those bowlers, but half of them got injured within 2 weeks. I mean, we lost 3 in the Zimbabwe tour. So we had 2 bowlers on loan in the 4th game of the season. If you remember, Jake Ball took Pfeiffer against Worcester, won us the game, and then we had Blatherwick from Lancashire. We literally had no other bowlers. And then suddenly, Carsey's out the store, and then Potts obviously as well. So that suddenly starts to become a problem there. And we landed on Cody Youssef through a little bit of a fluke. We got our overseas pick wrong in terms of Dogger. We signed him for 8 matches and then suddenly realised that he hadn't played the 20 list A 2020 games to enable him to stay for longer than 30 days. So he could only play 4, and then Cricket Australia pulled him for one of them. So, I mean, if you want a perfect storm, sort of we had that with the bowling attack, if you like, and that was a bit of a problem all year. But with the batting, that was more self-inflicted, that harmony, I think. I don't think we ever settled on the right order. Will Rhodes got 1,000 runs in First Division cricket for Warwickshire last season, season before last. And, is he batting 7 and bowling a few overs? Is he batting 3? McKinney goes to the Lions, Gay goes to the Lions. Beddingham suddenly gets called up for South Africa on some spurious tour of Zimbabwe. And I shouldn't use that phrase really, because I'm very fond of Zimbabwe. It's my second home really in Africa. So, but these are and then suddenly the World Test Championship. And you've got a bloke like Beddingham, who's the middle order, who got the leading run scorer in the country last year, 1,300 runs. He plays a game, he's gone for 4 weeks. He plays a game, he's gone for 4 weeks. And the batting order suddenly becomes completely dysfunctional. And you know full well that, batsmen want some certainty about where they're going to be, whether are they going to be batting 3, or are they going to be opening? Are they going to be batting 5, or are they going to be batting 7? And I just felt all year it was just a mess. It felt like a mess, and it ended up being a mess, I'll be honest with you.
And to follow up, you mentioned about overseas there. I've always been a firm believer, if you get your overseas right, your overseas is the one that makes the difference at sort of finishing 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And if you don't get it quite right, like Lancashire a couple of years ago, Durham possibly this year, you do run the risk of getting into trouble. And we've spoke to a couple of coaches. Paul Forbres spoke to us, and I look at someone like Sussex, and they don't see them as overseas players. They see them overseas positions, and make sure they're full. That position's full all the time. And you mentioned Doggett was only there for he was meant to be there for 8. He was there for 4. Is it important that Durham make sure they get their overseas players right? Because you're looking at the season from afar. There was this sort of competition for places. There's not as many young players from Durham in and around that group. It seems to be a lot of outsiders where we've built our success in years gone by with the homegrown players that have gone on and played for England, and then the overseas. The back end of the season, it just seemed as though we were sort of struggling for numbers a little bit in that front.
Yeah, no, I listen, overseas is critical. I mean, I think Ryan will probably tell you that I think for 60% of the games this year, we only had one overseas player. And that wasn't the same overseas player. Whereas in previous years, we've always had Beddingham. Okay. And then it's been a combination of bowlers, because they're really hard. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. And obviously they get called into franchises, they get called back for A tours and all this sort of stuff. So that was definitely a challenge for us. I think as far as the young Durham players go, I mean, obviously James Minto, clearly fantastic talent, youngest ever to get 5 wickets and 50 runs. Of course, he goes off to play England under 19s, and he gets injured, and he's had his family tragedy. So, but he's very, very young, and we shouldn't be relying on young James. But he's a kid that's going to play a big part in the future. The other young lad, as you well know, would certainly have played a lot of cricket for us this year, was Daniel Hogg. And of course, he was injured for most of the season. So that's a bit of an issue. And then we've obviously got the talent that is Ben McKinney, that clearly a lot of people have got eyes on. But he's young and he's inconsistent. And when he's good, he's brilliant. And you can see that he's clearly going to succeed at a higher level. He's one of those lads. But you see, we stuck with him, obviously. There were times during the season you think, would we be the safety option would be to back Will Rhodes number 3 for argument's sake. So we stuck with McKinney. And then on the back of those, then you've got young Hayden Mustard, and you've got Robbie Bowman, Luke Robinson. Those young lads are still there. Make no mistake about that. But the 3 lads that probably would have played quite a lot of first team cricket this year would have been McKinney, would have been Hogg, and would have been Minto. And they're all sort of under the age of 20. So the Durham, talent pipeline, it's definitely still there. But they've got to be fit. And then obviously with McKinney, we know full well he's in and he's out all the time. And we did take a decision with James Minto to let him go and play for England under-19s, rather than stay and play here. So we think that was probably right for his development as well.
Tim, can we spread it a bit wider and talk about county cricket then, and the structure of the championship and the structure of the season? As Harmy said, we spoke to Paul Farbrace yesterday. He was co-opted onto the committee at the beginning of the season, and he said it was very clear to him then that agreement would be impossible. He was very succinct in his explanation for the fact that the players, the CEOs and the directors of cricket all have disparate and divergent viees. I mean, he wasn't despondent. Well, actually, he was a little bit despondent, wasn't he? So we wanted to ask you what the solution is. So he explained what the problems are, and we want the Tim Bostock solution.
Okay, well, listen, I suspect I know what the problems are, very much constitutional, needing 2/3 of a vote to get any change through. That's the first thing, okay? And that is a real problem. Because you only need 7 clubs to block stuff, and nothing ever gets through. So therefore, my experience in the 5 or 6 years that I've been involved in those sort of meetings is that 2/3 constitutional rather than a simple majority is the real issue, and we're unlikely to get change unless we sort that constitution out. And I find that really quite interesting. I mean, we managed to leave the European Union on a simple majority. Okay, we have a Scottish referendum on a simple majority. Okay, the SGMs that some of the more interested members in terms of voting for more cricket or less cricket are always on a simple majority, and yet the overall governance of the game is on 2/3. So I mean, that is the biggest single reason why it's going to be really, really hard to get change. I think the other bit as well, and you've touched on it, is that I can say this, and I was in all those meetings because I'm on the PGC, put a massive amount of time and effort into trying to get some structural change to improve our domestic schedule and our domestic competitions. And yet often the CEO would have a completely different view to the chair. The DOC might not even understand what's going on, and that's no disrespect. You just haven't been communicated to. And it's a frigging bunfest. Honestly, you couldn't write a book on this. There's a real, in my opinion, there's a real lack of leadership in cricket. And that in itself creates the position where it's very, very difficult to get change through. I mean, the frustrating thing to me that this became a narrative about how many games we play and a reduction in cricket. And it was never about that. It was about how can we make our 3 domestic competitions world class, better than they are now? What changes do we need to make structurally to bring in more jeopardy, more pressure, more excitement at the end of the season? Encourage some of our really talented players not to go off and play franchise cricket, but to stay and play red ball cricket. How do we make first-class cricket in England the best in the world? Which I believe it is, because we've got something nobody else has got. We've got tribalism here. Lancashire, Yorkshire, Gloucester, Somerset, Middlesex, Surrey, Warwickshire, Worcester. These things mean something, just like Sunderland, Newcastle means something, Liverpool, Everton. That's what we've got in the UK. And trying to really harness that to create a much better competition was the narrative. And yet it very quickly became, they just want to reduce the volume of cricket. Now, that was so disappointing for me, because that was never, ever the objective when we set out. And I don't think the chairs and the CEOs, some of them, I don't think they articulated that argument well enough, and the benefits of why we want to change. Now, that may well be because they didn't want to. Okay, but I am certain, and when we spoke to our members here, and it's okay people saying Durham's not a members club. Well, it is a members club. It's just that our constitution is slightly different. But we spoke to all our members here about, listen, this is what we think the season should look like, and this is how great it's going to be at the back end of the season. There's going to be some real quality Jeopardy cricket there, which is going to improve the whole lot for everybody. And I can't think that some of my colleagues, chairs and CEOs, did that. I'll be honest with you. They never did that, probably because they didn't want to. They probably felt it was too hard. And they run some of the clubs, I'm afraid, they run them like golf clubs. And we're not golf clubs, we're multi-million pound organisations. Like Barclays Bank have their AGM. They've got 200 people always turn up as shareholders, even if they've got 10 quid's worth of shares, and stand up and argue against the strategy of the bank. Do you think the chief exec of the bank, for 1 second, and the chair of the bank says, oh, thanks very much, we're going to take note of that and change our global strategy? Well, it's sort of, county cricket is a microcosm of that. You know, you'll get a couple of hundred people will turn up at a meeting and say, we don't want a reduction in cricket. And then the chairs head for the hills, instead of thinking, what's the bigger picture here for the whole of the game? And what amazes me as well, I'm on a bit of a rant here now, is that the players have been completely ignored in all of this. Which other business ignores their key employees who take up most of their costs? Who ignores them in thinking about what the future strategy is in any sort of business? And that, for me, is the biggest worry of all, that the players have been ignored.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I look at this. We spoke yesterday on the show, and I work in football as well. And it's like VAR. VAR's in. It's a modern technology and it's a modern way, but it's still got rules from 100 years ago dictating why it's got flaws. In my opinion, cricket, when they went to change the constitution and bring the 100 in, and we'll come on to the 100, when the money was coming in and the 100 was coming in, yes, we're going to give August away, but that's when we should have changed the constitution and the way English cricket was run in a way of how it looks, what the landscape of cricket looks. Do you think that time can come? Do you think that is a possibility? Or do you think because too many people have got too much skin in the game, like you mentioned, the golf clubs, the old school tie, the stuffy old blokes who want to drink their gin and tonics and sit as chairman of cricket clubs, have not got the best interest in English cricket? Because I said in 12 years since I finished playing cricket, the game has moved on so far. I mean, it's ridiculous, but we still have the same people thinking about it from 100 years ago, thinking about the rules. So is it time, now we've got this new competition, the 100, which has invested loads of money, and probably the big question is this the best time to invest in English cricket because of where it's at this moment in time? But will it be stood still because of the what you've been talking about, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, Harmy, we've all copped for, well over 20 million quid, untold riches that we never ever thought about 3 years ago. So if there was ever a time to think strategically instead of short-term and tactically, and I'm talking from a chair perspective here and a CEO perspective, this is the time, and they still fail to do it. And that is a bit of a worry, to be perfectly honest. Yorkshire have got 10,000 members. 660 of those 10,000 members said they didn't want a reduction in cricket, and therefore Yorkshire voted against the proposals. Even though I know full well that the players at Yorkshire, the cricket guys at Yorkshire, they wanted that change. 660 out of 10,000. Now that sums up what a mess that we're in. And equally, SGMs are being called when there are only maybe 50 or 100 members only needed, and then only 175 turn up. I mean, it is, there's nothing democratic about that. And that's what concerns me. And I think, again, I'll go back with the members. If the clubs had bothered to sit down and really talk it through, the members, about the benefits, about the change, I think that most members love their cricket. There's no doubt about that. Would have had more chance. And that's why I blame it on leadership. I'm not blaming the members, by the way. You can't blame the members. They're entitled to absolutely vote the way they want to vote. But you can blame the leadership. And I think there's been an abdication in leadership.
Tim, talking of concerns, it seems to me there's been a massive oversimplification of the sale of the 100 to the counties. It concerns me how many people seem to think that all the counties are going to get around 23 million quid and it's going to future-proof the game, and they don't seem to realise that that 450 quid or thereabouts is a lot of money, and you know, there's not going to be the control of the 100, and I don't know. I mean, it's concerning that for the Durham region that you know, that the exclusion from the 100 will continue. I don't know. It just seems to be a very, very bumpy road ahead, and one that is not necessarily going to be smoothed over and you know, by being paved with cash.
No, and that is a good point. And I think I'll go back to my point. So the 100 is the 100. And I think we have to view the 100 as a global franchise competition, a world-class global franchise competition that happens to be hosted in England during the northern summer months, right? Which gives it something that's unique. And that's why I think legitimately it can compete with the IPL in terms of they should be the two big comps. But what it does do for me, and this is why I'm going back to the formats again versus the schedule, it means it's even more important that we reinvigorate, we look at change, we look at positive change to make our domestic competitions better than they are now. Okay, and we've got to raise the bar, okay, not shrink to mediocrity. And that's why I'm so frustrated that we haven't embraced this change. And again, I'll go back to the point. It's not about how many games you play. It's about the quality of product and attracting quality players. So if I can just give you an example, you know, the idea of like a Super September when the top 6 teams all play against each other, you can imagine in that particular month, you'll have short-term overseas top quality players will come and sign up for 28 to 35 days for 3 or 4 games to play in that sort of intensity competition. A little bit like they're doing the 100 and a little bit like they're doing the Blast. We could have created that in the first class game. The Indians are allowed to play in first class cricket. The Indians would definitely be signing up, and they'd be sending them over saying, go and play in county cricket, go and play at the Super Sixes part of it, because that's as close as you're going to get to playing test match cricket in England. And when we're touring there in 2 years' time, all our young lads will have had really good experience. And then the commercial opportunity during that month with Indian players playing for each of the counties would be enormous. Now, they're all the things that we should be thinking about. So therefore, the 100's in a box there, which is a global franchise comp. And my frustration is that we could have made our county first-class competition at truly world-class, which attracts the best players, even if it's only for the Super Six part of the season. And that would have been brilliant.
Just finally from me, Tim, you know, we talk about, you know, sort of private investment into the game. You've got it into the 100. I'm probably talking from a Durham member's point of view, or a Durham Life member's point of view. Is there any chance we could be one of the next ones in? Is there any movement on that? Because, you know, it frustrates me a lot when international cricket doesn't go north of Nottingham. It frustrates me a lot when I'm seeing this, you know, 100 competition, and I look at my club and go, well, in the last 20 years, there's only Yorkshire and Surrey produce more England players than what Durham have. So, and we are not just geographically the northern county, we've got Scotland to go with as well, that we do attract in. Are we in a position to say, right, we should have a piece of that pie, because, you know, we deserve it?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think aspirationally, you know, obviously we hope that it goes from 8 to 9 to 10, whatever it goes to. And if the 100's successful, which I'm sure it will be, I'm sure those investors will want more games, and therefore they need more teams, because you've seen it happen in the IPL. They went from 8 to 10 to 8 and then to 10. Now they're talking maybe 12. So I'm certain expansion will come. I think it won't be in the next couple of years, but I think certainly the next television deal, I think it finishes 2028. I'll be amazed if 2029, you know, they're starting to be thinking about expanding. And of course, if they're thinking 2029, the conversations will take place probably in the next 2 years. And we are ideally placed, obviously, to have one of those teams for 1,000,001 reasons. I mean, your favourite football teams down the road, they've got backers that have got very, very deep pockets. They're building cricket stadiums in Saudi. You know, they've clearly got an aspiration, because they're a diaspora of South Asians that are in Saudi Arabia, to get stuck into cricket. So I'm certain that we have an opportunity. And by then, we might have a certain Ben Stokes that might want to front up the whole of the new franchise and be the face of, you know, he may well have done his time with England with an Ashes in his back pocket with a bit of luck. And we've got 25% of the Ashes squad of Durham players in these next few weeks, Harmy. I mean, that is an incredible achievement, by the way. So amidst the doom and gloom of being relegated, You know,
You get a picture, innit?
The real upside is just look at what we're going to be watching on our screens. So
as well as the Lions in the 19s. I mean, the Lions
exactly.
in the 19s. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got McKinney, you've got Gay, you've got young Jimmy Minto, and there's a lot more coming through behind that. So yeah, our aspiration definitely is we want to be one of the next cabs off the rank.
That was Durham Chief Executive Tim Bostock. Brilliant interview that. He joined us for a very, very wide-ranging chat. Harmy, just very quickly, he started off very relaxed, didn't he, Tim? But he, I think the phrase is, he started to lean into the interview at a couple of points.
He did, yeah. And I was so pleased by what he was saying. I was so encouraged by what he was saying. What I would say to anybody that's sort of, watching this was a man who cares about the game of cricket in this country. He's trying to make change for the better. He talked there about, the reduction of cricket wasn't for the sake of we didn't want to play less. It was to play more meaningful cricket, to get better content in our county game, and making sure that every sort of game counts, every day counts. So for me, I think he's a very, very good chief executive. I think he's a very, very good man when it comes to wanting the best for cricket in this country. And I think, more importantly, I think the reason why he got a little bit fired up is I think he's done a hell of a lot of work to try and get English cricket into a position of wanting to be better. And I think the reason why he got fired up talking to us was the fact that he's probably wasted 6-12 months of his time going round in a circle, like a lot of people have gone round in a circle for the last 25, 30, 40 years of English cricket, not really being able to agree on the best outcome for the game of cricket, as opposed to 18 individual entities, or people who don't want change, who basically listen to their county members who have not moved with the times and not moved with the game. So for me, I think he's not a one-off, because I think there's quite a few of the chief execs like that. But unfortunately, the worry for me is if we start getting to the point where these good people steal us with a bag in their heads and they're not making any headway, that we lose them. And that would be a big loss to cricket if we lost a character like, or a custodian like Tim Bostock, who is a chief executive who's got skin in the game.
Yeah, he was brilliant. I mean, as I said at the end of that interview to him, keep pushing for change. It's human instinct to fear change, but I mean, he's an advocate of the very best kind of change. Anyway, let's move on, Harmy, onto some of the other stories. Lancashire have appointed Stephen Croft as their full-time head coach after taking over from Dale Benkenstein on an interim basis last summer. Word about that. But also we should talk about South Africa against Pakistan in the second test in Rawalpindi. What a performance. Well, Senyorin Mutasamy, but it was Kagiso Rabada at number 11. 74 test matches it's taken him to score his first 50. The third slowest behind Glenn McGrath and Ishant Sharma, who took over 100. McGrath was 102 tests. I think Ishant Sharma was 94. But it was the way he batted, 71 off 61 balls, 4 fours, 4 sixes. And how about Simon Harmer? 1,000 wickets. 1,000 wickets. He made his first class debut in 2013. He's taken 1,000 wickets in 12 years.
It helps if you play most of your cricket at Chelmsford, and you go to Rawalpindi and Multan and places like that to ply your trade, because you're the second spinner behind Keshav Maharaj. But yeah, Harmer's been a brilliant servant for English domestic cricket, and obviously when he's had his chance for South Africa. But Rabada, I thought you'd like that lower order runs. You love the lower order runs. It's a brilliant thing, because I think every time you watch Rabada bat, you think there's a batter in there. Why is he batting at number 9, number 10, number 11? And you're thinking, this boy is far too good to bat number 11, or they've got an unbelievable side. And then he has a brain fade, and slugs one up in the air, and you think, well, that's why he's batting at number 11. But he's got a great technique. Left-handers look elegant anyway. And the thing I liked about it after the game, he said it was like this label is like one of the highlights of his career. I mean, he's not a T20 specialist by any stretch, because his record in Test match cricket is magnificent. But, you know, in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, he's played a lot of franchise cricket, was in IPL cricket and stuff like that. But to label again, like Virat Kohli after winning the IPL, to say this is one of the highlights of his career, that for me is brilliant, because he's highlighting Test match cricket is meaningful to somebody who has been a great servant to the game. So, yeah, it was a great victory. Pakistan are in disarray as ever. Lancashire, Crofty, that's a good appointment. I think Lancashire are always better when they appoint from within. It's a big county, but I think Lancashire are always better when they appoint from within. I was wondering if Jimmy Anderson's name was going to crop up. Not as head coach, but I thought it's some senior role in that, and it might in the future if he eventually stops playing when he's 55. But I think when the likes of Ashley Giles had it and the likes of Dale Benkenstein had it, having people from outside Lancashire doesn't seem to have always worked. It has on some occasions, but I think when you look at it, when they promote from within and one of their own has got in control of the Red Rose, a little bit like the White Rose, then you know what, they seem as though they're a better functioning ship. So good luck to Crofty. He's a great man. He's a good guy, and he's somebody who we've seen the back end of last summer galvanise a group of players who were probably at rock bottom when Keaton Jennings decided to relinquish the captaincy and Dale Benkenstein was relieved of his post. So good luck to Crofty.
Talking of Jimmy Anderson, I need to correct myself. Kahisa Rabada was the 4th slowest to reach his first Test 50, because Jimmy Anderson took 95 Test matches. And let's not forget, we need to remind people, Jimmy scored 80.
I don't know how he did it, but again, another elegant left-hander that slugs one up in the air every now and again, or reverse sweeps one up in the air every now and again.
Jimmy is also the only other person to have taken 1,000 wickets since the turn of the millennium. Since 2000, Jimmy Anderson and Simon Harmer with 1,000+ wickets. Brilliant effort. Okay, so South Africa play India next. That's during the Ashes. And that'll be really interesting, because India have bullied South Africa on the last couple of series by preparing rank turners and then just Ashwinning and Jadejaing them out. But now that Keshav Maharaj and Simon Harmer are in South Africa's ranks, it'll be interesting to see whether they do that with no Virat and no Rohit to score the runs as well. So that'll be a really interesting sideshow during the first part of the Ashes. Okay, on to the final word. 2 things for you, Harmy. Let's start with the PCB, because they're always a soft target. But I don't know. I thought this was mildly ridiculous, and you said, well, perhaps it isn't quite so ridiculous. They've appointed Shan Masood, the Test captain, as consultant for international cricket and players' affairs, and he's still the Test captain. So that sounds like he's going to have to sort out contracts and payments and relationships with other boards while he's still the Test captain. It's a bit of a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, he's an intelligent lad, is Shan Masood. I think he's been to quite a few universities in England to, further his educational experience. He's really needed all here, because I'm not sure. I really don't know what to make of this. First of all, I thought it was a positive, because you know what the Pakistan board's like. I mean, there was 27 different selectors when Jason Gillespie was in charge with Gary Kirsten. So, I mean, try and work that one out, and you've got a player on there. I just wonder if he is possibly going to be the player's voice, the sort of. But if you've got somebody who is potentially saying, right, over the course of the next 3 years, this is where our cricket's going. These are the players I think, as Test captain, I think who are going to be playing for us. And these are the ones that I want to work with as captain, and we give contracts to. If that's the role, then it's a good role. If it's, the hire and firing part of it, which is, negotiating contracts with players that you're going to have to share a dressing room with, you're potentially going to have to leave out and then ask to go, have to come in the next Test match and go again. who knows that, the ins and outs of the contracts. I think that might be a little bit more difficult. So they do muddy the waters in Pakistan, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But first impressions, I thought, well, it might not be a bad thing that we have a strategy. We know where our cricket's going to be in the next few years, and our captain is the one that's going to lead from the front, as in on the field, and he is going to get whoever he wants to go with him. And I think that's not a bad thing, because that's what Ben Stokes has got. I don't think Ben Stokes picks contracts, but I think Ben Stokes will have a huge amount of input with Rob Key and Brendan McCullum, that for the next 3 years we're going here in Test match cricket. So I think we're going to need X, Y, and Z from a quality of the cricketer, and then Rob Key sorts the rest out. So do boards have that? I think they do. Pakistan just looks in absolute shambles all the time, and unfortunately, it gets picked up, even magnified a little bit more when they have, what is it, a consultancy of international cricket and player affairs. Not just the captain having his say on who he wants to pick.
Very well put. Okay, it's to Harare we go for the final word. Zimbabwe wrapped up an innings victory in their one-off Test match against Afghanistan, and I have to say, just judging from the highlights and the scorecard, it was a very compelling performance. It's their first Test win at home in 12 years, and it was also their biggest Test win. But at the centre of it, and I've got a soft spot for this man. He suffers, and he has suffered from middle brother syndrome for his whole life, poor chap. And it is, of course, Ben Curran, who now is the very proud owner of a Test 100. Tom and Sam were always ahead of him, and he didn't take the English route. Did obviously play county cricket, but returned home. He was born in Zimbabwe, and was determined to make a go of it. And good on him. Good on him.
Brilliant. Honestly, it was brilliant. Brilliant to see. I mean, can you imagine the text messages flying around over the last few years? Come on, get your finger out. I'm a World Cup winner, T20 cricket, and Tom Curran, county championship winners and all that stuff. And now, I mean, when they play top trumps, Ben Curran can say, I've got a Test 100. What you got? So, good for him. I've got a soft spot for the Curran family as well. I like Sam, and I've been a little bit critical. I'm not critical of the player. I'm just thinking in the 50 over format from Sam's point of view, I don't think his strength is the 10 overs and that, that he can bat at number 7, but the 10 overs bit, I think Ben Curran has done a brilliant job for Zimbabwe at the top of the order. And it was brilliant in the summer, wasn't it, when we were commentating on that first Test match or the only Test match against Zimbabwe, and to see Tom and Sam in the crowd at Trent Bridge supporting their brother was fantastic. So pleased for him. He has gone back to his native roots, which is Zimbabwe. They are on the up. They have, like we've said a few months ago, they have gone the hard way of trying to sort of keep promoting and pushing Zimbabwe cricket. They played 11 Test matches this calendar year. Yes, it was going to be very, very difficult for them, especially with the opponents that they had. But they keep fighting, trying to strive to be better, and that's what Ben's done. And he's got 100 for it. So, Christmas in the current household this winter could be a good one around the Christmas table. What have you done over the course of the last 12 months, lads? Well, I've done this, I've done that. Have you got a Test 100? No, I win. Thank you very much.
Oh, you've been listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. We'll be back at the same time next week to look back at England's ODI series against New Zealand, which will be concluded by then. But for now, this has been another edition of Following On.